කියලා කියන්නේ something like this. Only you have a state, another initial state. Something like this. So you see there are epsilon transitions, null transitions. Yeah, you can go to A and B without taking any input. Ek an epsilon කියන්නේ null මුකුත් නැතුව you can go to A, you can go from A to B. Again, without taking anything, you can go to D from B. Okay, so now what happens in an NFA? The delta function in NFA looks like Q cross sigma goes to 2 to the power of Q. That's what happens. Okay, in epsilon NFA, your delta Q cross sigma goes to, sorry, Q cross sigma, sigma can alphabet එකනේ. alphabet එක එක්ක A B ඔහොම ඉන්න කට්ටියනේ. එතකොට ඊට අමතරව you can get epsilon as well නේ. Yeah, instead of A B or whatever the symbols in the alphabet, you can get epsilon as well. So we have to say this union epsilon. Yeah, Q cross sigma and sigma or the epsilon, either one. That will take you to 2 to the power of Q. That is how you define epsilon NFA. Okay, so what some books do is they talk about these two separately with these two definitions, but if you refer some reference books, they specify this itself as the NFA. Okay, because all NFAs are anyways epsilon NFAs. Only difference is epsilon is not there in an NFA. Okay, eventually DFA, NFA, everybody comes under epsilon NFAs. Okay, we said all DFAs are anyways NFAs and all NFAs are anyways epsilon NFAs. Okay, therefore everybody finally comes under that. So some books define this as NFAs and they talk about NFAs and that in general. Okay, however, we'll be talking about them separately because that's easier. That makes our lives easy. Okay, so now here the only difference between that and this is that you can see, you can go from one state to another upon seeing an alphabet symbol or upon seeing nothing at all. Okay, upon seeing nothing at all, without seeing anything. Without seeing anything, like an epsilon, you can go to a state. This, we give this a name. Okay, we give this a name, we call this the epsilon closure. මුකුත්ම දකින්න නැතුව ඒ කියන්නේ null transition එකක් තියෙනකොට අපි කියනවා මේකට epsilon closure කියලා. So what is meant by the epsilon closure? That means what are the reachable states from a particular state upon seeing epsilon. Okay, upon seeing epsilon from state A, where can you go? Right? Now let's take this example, this one that we drew. So when I'm at state A, when I see E, I can go to A. Remember, when you are at a particular state, null transition එකක් තිබ්බම ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක් තිබ්බත් එතනමනේ කොහොමද තින්නේ, you are anyways there. Okay, so remember, when you are at a particular state, upon seeing a null transition, you are anyways there. So you say that when you are at a Q state, the null transition will take you to the same Q state because you're anyways there. There's nothing more to do. Okay, so that comes by default. By default, you will be at the same state upon seeing the null transition. Okay, after that, A will also go to B upon seeing the null transition. Yeah, But we can't stop there because B naturally goes to D with the null transition. Okay. Because of that, what do? We say E closure. That means the states that I can reach from A upon seeing null transition will be the union of the results, which means these two. Union of the results I got. A, sorry, not those two, all these three. A, B, and D. This is the E closure of A, which means null symbol එක දැක්කහම A ගේ ඉඳන් මට යන්න පුළුවන් කට්ටිය කවුද? A ගේ ඉඳන් මට Aටම එන්න පුළුවන් null එකෙන්. That is a default mechanism. Then I can go from A to B. B ට පස්සේ B ගෙන් I can go to D. So A, B, D is a null closure of state A. Okay, right. Now let's see how we can convert this epsilon NFA, this one, to an NFA. Okay, epsilon NFA NFA එකක් කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා බලමු. හරිද? ඊට පස්සේ we can convert that into a DFA as well. Okay, now we are going to look at this. Then we can do this as well. Okay, now before we do that directly, okay, before we directly see how we can convert that into an NFA, we'll first see what are the E closures, the epsilon closures of the states. Okay, null දැක්කහම කොහෙටද යන්න පුළුවන් කියන එකත් මුලින්ම බලමු. ඒක මම එහෙමයි කරන්න යන්නේ. හරිද? I'm going to use an easy method to do this. So when you take a particular state, let's take state A, okay, I'm going to first see what its null closure is. E closure is epsilon closure. එයාගේ E closure එක බලනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ඒකට 0 input එක දුන්නාම කොහෙටද යන්නේ කියලා බලනවා. හරිද? ඊට පස්සේ දැන් එයාට බිඳුව දුන්නාම එන state set එකක් තියෙනවානේ. I have a resulting set of states which I can go to upon seeing symbol 0. After that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to again get the null closure of that resulting set of states. Okay, let's do an example and see what I'm telling here. Okay, if I give this in the more of a theoretical way, first I'm going to check what's the E closure of A, epsilon closure. Then I'm going to give a particular ඊට පස්සේ ඕකටම එන උත්තරයට for that E closure of A, I'm going to give a delta. That means I'm going to see what will happen to it upon getting the symbol, some symbol 0 or 1 or whatever the number of alphabet symbols that are there. Okay, ඊට පස්සේ A එන උත්තරයට එතනින් මට එන result set එකට okay, for that result set, I'm going to again check what the E closure of that is. That is what I'm doing in this table. Okay, E closure gatta, result එක gatta transition එක, then again I'm going to see the E closure of that. Okay, now let's do the first step for A and see what happens. Okay, right, what is the E closure of A? E closure of A is, now we discussed, we have A, we have B, and we have D. E closure කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? The states that I can reach upon seeing nothing. Okay, okay, now I'm referring to this. I'm looking at this NFA, epsilon NFA. Okay, now see where can I go by looking at 0. A වල ඉඳන් 0 දැක්කහම මම කොහෙටද යන්නේ? A වලටමයි. B වල ඉඳන් 0 දැක්කම කොහෙටද යන්නේ? C. D වලදී 0 දැක්කොත් I'm at D. Okay, Then what do? I get the E-closure of this resulting set. Now what is the E-closure of A? A, B, D. Okay. What is the E-closure of C? C ge E-closure එක මොකක්ද? C වගත්තාම. When I take C, what is the null closure of C? E-closure of C. So where can C go upon seeing nothing? Upon seeing nothing, C can only go to C. වෙන එකක් නැහැ. එයාට null transitions මුකුත් define කරලා නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ එයාට එන්න පුළුවන් එයාටම විතරයි. So it's only C there. D ටත් එහෙමම තමයි. It's same as C. He can also go to itself. So this is D. Okay. So what do? Now I have my transition table as usual. 0, 1. My transition table for the states A, B, C, D. This is the NFA, epsilon NFA transition table. Now, when I'm at state A, upon seeing 0, what are the states I can go to? I can go to all these states. So I should get the union of those results and put them here. A, B, C. Okay. This is the transition table. Right? So that is what happens when I'm at A and when I see a 0. Even when you look at the diagram, you can say that you can go to A, B, C, D, because from A, when you take a 0, you can come back to A. Null handa, you can anyway go to B. Again, you can go to D. Then it is 0, you can go to C as well. Okay. Now let's do the same thing for A when I get alphabet 1. Okay. I'm going to check the E-closure. Now the alphabet is 1. Again, I'm going to check the E-closure. A, what is the E-closure? A, B, and D, that I know now. Okay, what will happen when I take 1? A will take I don't have anywhere to go. That's not defined. B will take that is also not defined. Yeah. What will happen to D when I get 1? I come to D itself. Okay. Now these two don't have any E-closures because they are anyway not defined. What is the E-closure of D? That is anyway D, we know that. Okay. Now when we get symbol A and when the input symbol is 1, what are the states I can go to? The union of the results, which means I go to state D. Okay. So as you can see, in this method, the first set that you get is the null closure of that particular state. Okay. There's a method 10 A input symbol what's the result you will get. Then the final one is what is the E-closure of the resulting set. E-closure, then results sticker, the E-closure. Okay, now A's tasks are done. Capital A is done. Now we go to capital B. Let's do the same thing for capital B also. What is the null closure of B? Null closure of B is B is there itself and B and D. What will happen if I give 0 to B? Then I go to C. Yeah, I go to C, and then when I give 0 to D, I go to D. Then what is the null closure of C? C my null closure of D, D my. Okay, then where do I go? I go to C and D here. Okay, thereafter, I do this for the input symbol 1, state B. Null closure is B and D. What will happen if I give 1 to B? 1 to B දුන්නොත් යන ගණන් නැහැ. Undefined. D ට දුන්නොත් D තමයි එන්නේ. Null closure is D. Okay, right. Then I get D over here. Okay. Now we do the same thing for C. C and then D. Okay. When I take C, what is the null closure of C? Null closure of C is C. I hope you remember. Then what will happen if I give 0 to C? C to 0 do not. I don't have a what do you call transition. Okay. I'll do 1 also here itself because C to when I closures for the states 1. When I give 1, what happens? What happens to C when I give 1? I go back to B. Okay, now get the null closure. Null closure B null closure. What is it? B and D. Yeah, okay. So when C gets input symbol 0, I am at null. And when I get input symbol 1, I am at B and D. Yeah. So I put 5 and here I put B, D. Finally, I do this for D, state D. This null closure is D. What happens to D when I give 0? D will yano. 1 do not there D will minus because it has a recursion there. Then what is the null closure of that? D. Null closure of this, D. So both the answers are D's. Okay. Now what do? I look at this and I draw my NFA. I'll go this way. Okay. Now I draw my NFA. Now remember this is epsilon NFA to NFA. Okay. Earlier what we did was NFA to DFA. This is NFA to NFA. Okay. Right. Now what do? We draw our states A, B, D. Now there's something to remember. Now as you see here, D is my final state, but the thing is A can go to B, B can go to D without any input. Yeah, because of that, I mean, with this null symbol, I can directly go to B. Therefore, I have to make A and B also my final states. Okay. When I convert an epsilon NFA to NFA, if a state can reach the final state upon seeing nothing, then we name that state as a final state. Okay. Upon seeing nothing, if and go to the final state from a particular state, that given state is also a final state in the NFA. Therefore, I make these two also my final states. ඊට පස්සේ මොකද කරන්නේ? මට මේ ට්‍රාන්ස්ලේෂන්ස් ටික තියෙනවා වගේ මම මේක ඇඳගෙන යනවා. Okay? ඒට බිඳුව දැම්මහම මට හැම එකටම යන්න පුළුවන්. So draw that. Now I have a C also. Forgot that. හරි. ඊට පස්සේ එක දුන්නාම I go to only D. Okay, right. Thereafter, when I take B, I can go to C and D, and 1 dunnahamat etantama yan. Then when I'm at C, I can go to B upon 1 and also D upon 1. Okay. Then finally, when I come to D, I recurse there itself. So remember, this is a NFA. Okay. Therefore, you don't put, don't mess this up with DFAs. Here you have a dead configuration. but this is an NFA, so their configurations are fine. Okay, you don't have to draw trap states because we are not yet in the DFA stage. We are still at the NFA stage. That's not a problem yet. Okay, so this is the equivalent NFA for the DFA that we drew before. Okay, now let's draw the DFA for this. Then api මේකෙන් යනවා DFA එක අඳින්න. I'll erase this for now. This is a bit of a long process, so listen well. Okay, now we are going to convert that into the DFA. Okay, when we do the DFA transition table, what we do is we have to look at the transition table that we did. Where is it? Over here. Okay, we have to look at this transition table that we did, and first choose the E closure, the epsilon closure of the initial state of that NFA. Okay, what is the initial state of this NFA? Initial state was A. Yeah, here also the initial state was A, so there are also the initial state is A. So when I do the DFA, I have to first choose the null closure, the epsilon closure of the initial state, right? That becomes the initial state of my DFA. Now, if I write the closures for these states, E closure of A was A, B, E closure of B was BD, E closure of C was C, D was D. Okay? This was my initial state. Therefore, this is what I choose as the initial state for my DFA. Remember that. Okay, this happens when you convert the epsilon NFA into your DFA. Okay, right. So when you do the transition table, what do you choose as your initial state? The E closure of that A, B, D. Right? And now keep on filling the table just like we did before. Get the unions and all. Okay. So A, B, D කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? These two and this. You have to get the union of them. Okay. Okay, so here when you take 0, you come to A, B, C, D. Okay, that is going to be that. And then when you get 1 upon A, B, D, you come to D. Then choose the new state that you got, A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D, all together. You have to get all together. When you get all together, what happens? Here you get A, B, C, D. Union of everybody, all the results. Here you get BD. A new one comes BD. BD විතරක් union කරාම මෙතනට එනවා CD. And here you get BD, so this is D. Another new one came, CD. So union C and D. Okay, now you have your table, and what do? You draw your DFA using this. Okay, so anybody who has the final state becomes your final state in the DFA. Okay, right. I hope you can draw the DFA. You just have to put these states, these set of states, and draw the transition between 0 and 1 where they will go. Then ABD gattahama, when you take ABD, that becomes a final state. When you give 0, you go to ABCD. It takes time to draw this. That also becomes a final state. Likewise, you have to draw. When you take 1, you come to D. That also becomes a final state. Likewise, this DFA is going to be a rather big one. So this is how you do the DFA. By looking at the table, just like we did before, you draw the DFA, okay? All the new resulting states should get the transition in the DFA table. Because since that a single state, D is the only one. Okay, yes, good. Thank you for reminding that. Okay, so we took an epsilon NFA and then we converted that into an NFA. Okay, so that was done by getting the E closures, the epsilon closures rather. Okay, thereafter we constructed a DFA table just like we did before in the previous examples. However, the new thing that we took was that the initial state of the DFA was the epsilon closure of the initial state in the NFA. That was the only difference. And then we did the DFA for this. Okay, let's do another example so that this will become clear.